Hello everyone, Kilpo1 here with a slightly different Forever Winter video. Today, we're going to be discussing the game itself, the things I like about it and the things I don't. In essence, this video is just a way for me to solidify my current views on the game, and only represents my opinions, nothing more. With this in mind, let us get started. Casual friendly. The Forever Winter combines several small features into what I would say is a highly casual friendly approach to the extraction shooter genre. These small features being its PvE nature, the player control of wipes, and lastly no in-raid timers. PvE nature. While I enjoy PvP at times, in the current day and age it has become much harder to enjoy. The prevalence of real money transactions, RMT, and for-profit cheating companies have made cheating a major issue, with plenty of players willing to pay to get ahead, or to dominate the opposition. While certainly not everyone engages in these practices, it does feel like the integrity of many PvP scenes has greatly diminished. In addition, PvP is incredibly demanding on game developers, partially due to PvPers having a knack for being heavily invested and vocal, demanding constant balance fixes, updates, and content. Providing for such a community, while also tending to PvE, is a difficult task, and I have seen many larger companies struggle to provide and balance for both PvE and PvP, such as Bungie with Destiny, or Blizzard with World of Warcraft. The Forever Winter staying small in scope in this regard I feel is wise, and will allow them to devote their attention to solely making a good PvE game, rather than a mediocre PvPvE game. Player control of wipes. For other games, to level the playing field and to refresh the game, wipes are a regular occurrence. However, with the Forever Winter having no servers, you are in control of your wipes, letting you play at your own pace. Do you prefer to grind the game in a short period, come back to it months later, and not lose any progress? The game will accommodate you. Prefer to play for an hour a week for an entire year? Accommodated. Or do you want to start a new account, wiping all prior progress whenever you want? The game allows for all of this. Though, before we move on to our next section, the developers have noted that they may need to wipe certain aspects of the game in the early access period for compatibility. Now onto the lack of in-raid timers. My last point in this section is the no in-raid timers, allowing different types of players to play at their own pace. Do you prefer to go fast, guns blazing, and vacuum up all the loot? Yeah, you can do that. Or do you prefer a more methodical, stealthier approach, carefully choosing what you pick up? Neither is punished or rewarded by any of the game systems. Well, except for perhaps the first critique in this video, the water system. For those who do not currently play the game, the water system in the Forever Winter is a mechanic that ticks down, constantly, even when you are not playing the game. When you run out of water, your account is soft wiped. Your inventory is gone, but your progression and character experience remain. Responding to the critics of this mechanic, the developers have patched it multiple times now, to make water easier to acquire with quest rewards, automation, and ways to mitigate or even stop the soft wipe. But in doing so, they have watered down the water mechanic, to such a point where I feel it is meaningless. However, the biggest sin for me of the water mechanic is that in its current iteration, there is a balancing trap. For a mechanic that goes off the real-world time of your computer, there is no way to balance between those who play more or those who play less, those who play faster or those who play slower. If the intent for water is to feel like a scarce and important resource, there is no way of currently providing a consistent experience between different types of players. And it is for this reason I believe they need to pursue solutions that take time out of the equation, or this will be a major pain point for myself and many others, though our reasons may differ. Frozen Swamp. The map Frozen Swamp feels like one of the game's first almost feature-complete maps. Its pacing, points of interest, and aesthetic of the map mesh into what for me is a complete experience. Pacing-wise, Frozen Swamp does an amazing job of providing a large area for scale, while also limiting and funneling you into certain areas naturally. When I play this map, it doesn't feel like I'm going between point A and point B, but that I'm on a journey through a dangerous area. In contrast to my prior favorite map, Ashen Mesa, its openness is both a boon and a detriment. Great for viewing giant battles, but for traversing between the landmarks, it doesn't feel quite like a journey, or remotely dangerous. Just walking through a theme park on my way to the next attraction. Points of interest. Frozen Swamp is the first map that I would say has an actual adequate number of diverse locations, each having their own quests, units, and challenges. This combined with the pacing through the map makes each run feel unique, a rare feat for an extraction shooter. In addition, the injector site serves both as a grand set piece for the map, while also providing amazing vertical elements with a clear high-risk, high-reward location. Something I personally hope future maps will lean into, and perhaps an inspiration for updating the other maps, my next dislike. The older maps. The older maps in comparison to Frozen Swamp feel like night and day. For Frozen Swamp highlights two quite brazen issues with the older maps, these being a lack of gameplay in connecting areas, and a lack in diversity, expansiveness, and quantity of their points of interest. Gameplay in connecting areas. To elaborate on what I mean by gameplay, I don't mean only things to shoot, but rather choices to be made and obstacles to overcome, with enemies only being part of the equation. On the map Elephant Mausoleum and Ashen Mesa, the connecting areas between the points of interest are inconsequential. They serve as a buffering zone before the next area, and the only obstacles you may ever find here are those of scattered enemies. Though the approach to these is always the same: run through or shoot them. In contrast, Frozen Swamp introduces a few different things that work in tandem, that being the natural hazards of deep water and the difficult to navigate terrain, forcing the player to make choices with each. Do you brave the waters, trying to skirt around the patrols? Do you climb over and through the terrain, a slower but safer task? Or do you face your challenges head on, creating a path through anything in your way? Frozen Swamp accommodates. While some maps offer these choices better than others, all pale in comparison to Frozen Swamp. And while some maps do a good job of changing the pace up, like Underground Cemetery, its small size and monotony quickly turns novelty into tedium. Moving into our next point, the lacking of both quantity and quality of points of interest in older maps. Points of interest. I think the biggest takeaway from the older maps is they feel like fragments of a larger and complete picture. The trench lines of Elephant Mausoleum give the impression of an epic journey, navigating a maze of trenches amidst a war, but it ultimately feels like a journey to nowhere. The fortifications of Scorched Enclave pale in comparison to their surroundings, their superficial depth making them feel insignificant. Meanwhile, the fields of Ashen Mesa are dotted with numerous points of interest that prioritize quantity over quality. However, there's no sense of journey connecting these points, and many feel hollow, offering little substance beneath their facades. Naturally, not every point of interest can be as thorough or expansive as the injector site. However, maps centered around set pieces, like Scorched Enclave and Cemetery, I feel require that level of depth to compensate for their lack in quantity. While the older maps have their flaws, they collectively excel in one area: aesthetics. This brings me to my final positive point: the art. This should come as no surprise, as this game was originally supposed to be an art book, but the aesthetic and ambiance of the game is great. Much like many of its units, it feels like a kit bash of many genres. You have the armored core battletech-like mechs of Europa, the biopunk units of Eruska, with lastly, the more dystopian high-tech cyberpunk units of Eurasia. All of this combines into what feels like a truly unique setting, something not often achieved. And while there are shortcomings at the time, I feel many of these are due to time constraints, relying on asset packs to get the game into a playable state, such as the many modern guns. Lastly, the environmental art is no slouch either, with beautifully designed maps that, while may have gameplay problems for now, are undoubtedly still captivating in their aesthetic. Perhaps done more so than the Eclipse on Ashen Mesa, my personal favorite. Now onto the last segment, what I want to see the most in this game. This last segment, progression and overarching goals, is more of a personal wish. However, based on my prior experiences with games like Tarkov, it could also be seen as a critique of the genre as a whole. As an offline PvE extraction shooter, the Forever Winter has significant potential to innovate, free from the constraints of traditional expectations for what an extraction shooter should be. This is what excites me the most about the game, its potential to break free of this rigid mold, possibly exploring entirely new mechanics and gameplay loops, fundamentally altering the genre. For instance, it could integrate the cyclical progression of roguelikes, with failure being a stepping stone for the next survivors. It could utilize the resource management and planning of city builders, letting players balance scarce resources and manage their innards path into the future, or even the strategic depth of turn-based or role-playing games, offering dynamic events with meaningful choices, altering the game and the fate of your innards to craft a truly groundbreaking experience. These innovations would work toward what I truly desire the most from an extraction shooter: meaningful endgame goals. Not necessarily a definitive ending, but a sense of conclusion, closure that ties together the player's experiences and gives weight to their journey. The Forever Winter has the potential to rise above being just another extraction shooter. It could become a genre-defining experience by delivering what none of its colleagues have: a true endgame experience with a sense of conclusion, even if it was merely a stepping stone into the next cycle. That's all for this video. Let me know your thoughts on the Forever Winter down in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Take it easy, and I'll see you next time.